welcome to another episode of Shoes Off Inside. I am joined, of course, by our co-host, Kelly Hu, Tamlyn, Tamita. And listen, this is a kind of a unplanned episode that we're recording. I mean, well, I should correct myself. We did plan this recording, and we were going to talk about the new year and how to prepare for 2025 in different ways. And we decided to invite Dr. Jenny Wang, who is a prominent psychologist.
And a repeat guest.
And repeat guest.
Our first repeat guest.
Yes. Yes, you are. Yes, you have the honor of being the first repeat guest.
Yes.
The reason why is because you're so fabulous, and, you know, you have a way of making people understand, you know, sort of, you know, mental health and how to cope with different situations. And really, we were going to do this because we wanted to talk about the new year and how to get started on the right foot. But of course, as most of us know, LA, where Tamlyn and I, we live in the LA area. Kelly, of course, has connections to LA because she's lived here for many years.
I still own property there.
Still own property here. Yeah. Is under siege by these horrific, devastating, unprecedented fires. We have been all glued to what's been going on for the last several days. And we all know somebody who's been affected, they've lost everything. Yeah. Last count is that there are at least 10,000 structures that have been decimated. And that means 10,000 families, livelihoods are gone. They're just gone. And
I think one interesting fact that I think to put everything to scale is that the acreage of each of the major fires, the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire, are over the size of the island of Manhattan, New York City. Wow. So that's the scale of how large this fire is. So just to put in people's brains, it's like when they're saying 18,000, 20,000 acres, that's the whole island of Manhattan from, you know, downtown all the way to, you know, the Bronx. So the scale of it is devastating.
We should mention that it's not over. Yeah. It's not even close to being over.
Correct.
The Pacific Palisades fire right now, they're saying as of just a couple minutes ago, I've been watching this live press conference, is 6% contained, which is nowhere near, you know, controlled at this point. And then the Eaton fire, 0% contained. And there are other fires that keep on popping up. Mm-hmm. Before we go on, let me formally say hello, Dr. Jenny Wang. Welcome back. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I love having these conversations with the three of you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving us your time as well. So let's just talk about how's everyone feeling about this? I mean, look, Dr. Wang, you're in Texas, but I know that everyone is, you know, involved in this in terms of being interested in the story because it's so unbelievable. But how's everyone feeling about what's been going on? Kelly, why don't you start?
I have not been able to sleep, even though I'm here in Las Vegas. I have a pass, like a 1-week pass to an amazing convention, CES, you know, this electronics convention. Right. I went on the first day. The night before we started, I actually met a guy who was part of our group chat, and we were talking about, you know, where we lived, and he had mentioned that he was from the Palisades. I was like, oh, we were practically neighbors because it was so close to where I used to live. Yeah. The next day, his house was gone. Oh, man.
Yeah. Wow.
It's that shocking. Yeah. You know, it's from like 1 second to the next. And my house has been in the red flag zone for days now. So not evacuating, but like prepare, you know, get ready. So I've been on edge for the last few days now, just waiting to see if the winds shift or, you know, if there are any more friends of mine losing their homes. Some very, very dear friends of mine lost their home in Altadena on the first day of that fire. And it's devastating. It's devastating. Just even though I'm not in it, it's devastating to watch because, LA is so familiar to me. It was my home for 38 years.
Well, here's the thing. I think it's devastating to so many people who aren't even connected to LA physically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Wang, I think you can probably talk about this. Like, I think people across the country and around the world are feeling this, almost like it's something that's personal to them because everyone's so familiar with LA and California and, everything about it. So can you kind of talk to us from a psychological point of view of what people are likely going through?
Absolutely. I think what we're alluding to is this idea of vicarious trauma, right? That trauma, when it's happening to you, is a very different experience. But when you're watching it, and of course now it's on the news everywhere you look, updates, reports, and then of course the heart-wrenching videos of families standing right next to where their house used to be. And so that, in a sense, also activates our nervous systems to a threat response. And if you live in a part of the country or the world where natural disasters are very real, right? And it might not be fires, it might be hurricanes, it might be tsunamis. That also can activate your fear response, even if you're currently safe. And so there is almost a collective kind of, conscious traumatic experience. And when that happens, we can also feel extremely helpless.
Yeah.
What can I do? I'm here in Texas. What can I do? Right. And I love how all of these organizations have created resources where you can donate, where you can send mutual aid. Because in these events that are huge, right, and catastrophic in this large scale, it can feel like, well, what can I contribute? And often we lose our sense of control. Right?
Yeah.
It feels like there's nothing I can do. I don't have agency. And so I think slowly we need to start thinking about that piece, even in our daily lives. And often I say rituals are so important because they ground us. So you may be, attuned to what's happening with the fires, but I hope you're sleeping. I hope you're drinking water. I hope you're moving your body and connecting with safe people, because that is what grounds us to then rise to the needs of those who are hurting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right, Dr. Wang, about feeling helpless, right? So those of us who have not directly been impacted, because I'm far away enough from the fire zones that I don't have anything to worry about as of yet. It's funny, you kind of think about like, wow, it could happen anywhere, because I think this fire has proven that the term wildfire is not really accurate, right? There are places in LA now where they're flats, right? There's no way that Altadena thought that they would ever be affected by a wildfire. So a lot of us are feeling a little bit on edge because of these weather patterns and these unusual weather storms. But the helplessness and I think the magnitude of this disaster, I feel like, oh my God, what on earth can I do to help? But just so everybody knows, we have compiled a list of different resources so that we will be posting those for everyone to look at. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Tamlyn, have you been? You just you were telling me before that big tree was damaged.
Yeah.
Out there.
Thank you, May. And just going backward, thank you, May, for posting all the resources on Shoes Off Inside's Instagram site handle, also on your personal handle, Maylee, and Kelly and I have been liking it. But then I have to figure out how to repost it without having to take a picture of each post and then cropping it. It's like I'm just so old
technology.
School. Yeah, technology. Right? But thank you for putting that up. And it's just, it's your journalistic side about, community and what we can do to help. And thank you, Jenny, for really acknowledging the helplessness, because when you're hearing what can we do, what can I do, it's to who each of us are as individuals within this larger diaspora of Los Angeles and everything else going on in the world. It's like the helplessness, because when you say it versus the magnitude, that's when, I feel it's like I go through a myriad of things. I have not been watching the news. May told us, it's 5,000, 10,000 structures that have burned, since Tuesday. And Kelly being far away in Las Vegas, but I know she's, associated with the West Side. I'm here on the East Side. I'm 2 evacuation zones away, but we're far enough away. But it's the smoke, and it was the 100 mile per hour winds. Yeah. And it's just the comparison, and that's the one I don't want to compare my plight, because we didn't suffer any fire. It's everybody's suffering the smoke, and just funnily, or just really personally, we have a 90-foot and 90-year-old cedar tree right outside. It's barely 20 feet outside, and the branches fell, and they're big 5 branches, and there's a branch that fell from a higher elevation and fell and caught, and it's right outside our front door. It was like, so my Daniel had to buy a chainsaw. I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay. And I have to find that humor, because otherwise, the other extreme scale is like, what the fuck is everybody complaining about? You have your lives, the shit that's going still on in Gaza and Ukraine and all the other it's like, that's what I go through in my head. It's like, and the election. So it just runs that whole gamut. And I'm sure Dr. Yang knows, it's like, what can you do to help? It's like, it's the small things, to make sure you breathe, to make sure you sleep, to make sure you take in enough water, and all these little things. It's like just something that you can do, and check in with your loved ones, even if it's just a quick text to say. So it's just making sure we all feel connected, and whatever we can do is like, if you could donate food, if you could donate drinks, if you could donate kits, if you could donate monies to all these, every little bit helps.
I've been trying to. I've been sending a lot of texts and posts to my friends in LA about fostering animals.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we all feel like we need something to do, something to help. Right.
Sure,
and Jenny, I mean, isn't that the whole point? Like that, trying not to feel hopeless.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And there are times where hope is a choice. It's not a feeling. Right.
It's an act. It's an action.
Yeah. Right. And I think that coincides with the beginning of the year. You want to feel hopeful about the year. And yet we have these devastating fires and all these things, like Tamlyn mentioned, across the world that still breaks our hearts. And yet, how do you live, though, your day-to-day life, right? And we have to believe that the tiny measures of kindness or goodness are what we can do, right? And we do it locally. I remember when we had Hurricane Harvey, and friends flooded and were, evacuated from their homes. People did small things. Kids baked cookies to walk down the street to their neighbors. Like it felt small, but it was loving, and it was fiercely kind. And I think that's what we need to do, right? Because our connectedness is what allows us to have that hope.
Yeah.
And there are times where I will feel hopeless, and I will need to reach out to a friend and say, hey, I need your hope to carry me until I can feel hopeful again.
I need your hope. Oh, that's lovely.
That's beautiful. That's really good. Jenny, I wonder, because I posted something yesterday on tips on, how to help those who have lost everything. Right. And one thing that really struck me is, don't say, let me know how I can help to somebody, because they're not going to know. Right. And so that kind of just leaves it sort of dangling for the person. And so they'll never really respond to that. So can you talk about the better ways to try to be of help or support to somebody? I have I have a couple friends who lost everything. Their whole neighborhood is gone in the Palisades. A girlfriend of mine, she grew up in the house. 50 years of history are just gone. And so when I read these tips, it said, don't say, let me know how I can help, because that's exactly what I did before. So and then I sent her a new message saying, I'm here for you, whatever you need. Just know that I'm thinking of you and your family. And I guess that maybe makes a difference. I don't know. Can you talk about different approaches for people?
Yeah. It makes me think of like, a mom who's postpartum and people are like, let me know how I can help. And the mom's like, I can't even think about what's happening yet. Right? Or like, I think about somebody who's in a grieving process. They just lost a loved one. And it's like, let me know how I can help. And you're like, I can't even get up out of bed. Like, because that's labor, to go inside myself and to think of the things to ask. And in our culture, it's hard to ask for help too, right? And so there are all of those layers. And so I think one, like you mentioned, holding the space. I'm here. No need to respond, but my mind and thoughts are with you. If you want to talk, I'm here. So you can be a vessel, a container for people, right, who may want to speak and process externally. We can also say, these are the things that I can bring over. Let me take your kids, right? So you can sort out some things. Let me bring over groceries to the place that you're staying, right? Let me make you a meal. And in a sense, you're removing do I say yes or no? What do I ask for? You're just saying, this is what I'm able to offer, and make it very clear, because when you're in that psychological state, you're so overwhelmed, you're not processing, right, in this linear form. And so I think, so much of acts of service can be helpful. Even if it's just like, let me grab your laundry, let me do the week's worth of laundry that you have, or let me bring you clothes that I have, right, that might fit your kids. It's so tangible. But when people have lost their entire livelihood, it's about tangible, right? And the psychological processing might come in waves or much later. So when we do crisis incidents kind of intervention, we don't necessarily say, let's talk about the trauma right here, right now, because that might actually be damaging to people. We say, what can we do to make you feel safe? What can we do to give you basic needs, right? Are you sleeping somewhere where you feel safe? Are your kids able to have things that can keep their mind occupied? So we're not trying to get deep into kind of the trauma in the moment, because it's too soon for a lot of people.
What we did in my very tight group in Los Angeles, we're on a group chat, and one of the couples lost their home. And we had to stop posting in that particular group chat about the fires and, all these other things. And we started another chat without them, just to help them keep their sanity. Because I felt like, posting more and more about these fires, because they lost their home very early on, that it was just feeding their
re-traumatizing.
Re-traumatizing.
It's that
exactly.
cyclical. Yeah.
So they're lucky they have a place to stay. One of the things that I was thinking of, because they've lost everything, I mean, except for the bags that they packed, what they could fit in their car. I was thinking of maybe sending over a couple of bathrobes. I know that they didn't pack bathrobes, just something that feels comfortable, that gives them a little, I don't know, even if they never use it, but just that sort of, something that they can wrap themselves in and just relax around the house, or just something that I know that they didn't pack, even though they're staying in a place that has everything, like an Airbnb type thing. But they don't have a lot of their own stuff with them.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very you. That's very you, that enveloping in cozy comfort, Kelly. So
Yeah.
I think that, that couple will probably appreciate it. Again, and
Mm-hmm.
even if they don't use it, it's just the association of, comfort and coziness. I think it's very natural.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm going to
friendship.
go, yeah, I'm going to go to the other extreme, because I just texted a friend. Again, we haven't all been sleeping, and we try to get some sleep or rest. And I was texting another friend last night, because it's the air quality.
Yeah.
And so I know that everybody's out Amazoning or whatever, Home Depoting, trying to find air filters, and we had some extra. So I uh, lent some air filters to a girlfriend and her husband. She came over 11 o'clock last night. And there's another person in Pasadena and her 94-year-old mother. So I have another air filter. So I'm going to deliver it to them today. Remembering basic supplies. They can't drink the tap water in Pasadena, Altadena.
Yeah.
Because it's still unsafe so they have to boil it. So again, that thought of going to the market and picking up pallets of water and delivering it, it's like basics. Medicines, if I could go to the pharmacy to pick up their medicines, pet food, the pet food situation. It's just again, emphasizing to everybody who feels, what can I do? Is just little things, and the basics. To the other extreme, comfort things is like, is it going to be a cup of tea or a tea box, or even luxury things, a scent, a perfume, those kinds of things. They all help. They all help. Every little bit helps.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a very, very long journey for everyone. For this entire community. And again, it's for those directly impacted who have lost everything, but it's also for the greater LA community. Not everyone is touched by this in some way. And so the one thing I recall from grief of sudden loss, when my father, died very suddenly and tragically, is that after all the dust settles and everybody goes back to business as usual, is the loneliest time, because everybody has kind of forgotten, or they think everything's okay.
Right.
And it's not, right? And in this case, it's not going to be for a long time. So Jenny, can you kind of talk about that kind of support and that psychology, right, of people feeling like they've been left alone, and there's no more support, right now it's the community, everyone coming together, everyone banding together, but that's gonna peter off eventually, right?
Yes. And I think we're talking about that season of rebuilding. And I think when we're in crisis mode, there's a lot of attention, there's a lot of the galvanization, but the rebuilding road is long, and it is hard, and it's arduous. And so I think, oftentimes we're like, well, let's touch everybody in the beginning. But I would invite people to consider, maybe there's one or two, a couple of families where you say, my intention is to stick with them until the rebuilding is complete. And you actually get to celebrate that with them, whatever that means, And sometimes it's very simple. It's just a check in. How is this process going? Or maybe a lot of these people are working with their insurance companies now.
Yes.
And figuring out that process. And some people have never made a claim their whole lives, right? And so it's like, are there tangible ways where it's like, hey, I know you need to meet with a contractor. Let me take your kids for a couple hours because you need to go do stuff for the rebuild process. What does that look like? And also, I think in this case, it is very clearly grief. But I think often we're so oriented on action because there's things to do, right? The to-do is going to get longer and longer.
Right.
We forget to name the grief and the pain piece. And it's almost like sometimes we can get so stuck in the doing, we don't create space for the grief. And that's a very lonely part of this whole process. And so it's like, can we name this must be really hard? And can we name how the loss is an ongoing? Because people have lost memories, heirlooms, things that they cannot recover. And so it's a permanent kind of loss. And can we make space for that piece too?
Yeah, I literally offered my space, my place here in Vegas to a lot of my friends, even if they didn't actually lose their home, but my friends who are just suffering psychologically, I'm like, just come to Vegas. I've got extra rooms. You can get in, cleaner air here.
Yeah, I also offered my house. That's one of the first things I posted on Facebook. I just said,
Yes, you did.
I said,
Yes, you
friends
did.
in LA, if you need a place, my home is open to you. No one has taken me up on my offer, but I still mean it. But yeah, it's just whatever we can do. And again, the needs are so vast. It's like, I will admit, I have a little guilt too. It's almost like survivor's guilt.
Right.
Yeah.
That I have not been affected, and yet so many people I know have. And so, I mean, it's just, yeah, I'll admit it. There's a little bit of like weird survivor's guilt.
Yeah. Again, that survivor's guilt is because we're so lucky and we're grateful. And I think that compels us to do, it compels us to really, if I feel paralyzed and not being able to do something, to do something. Because if I'm grateful and lucky, I'm putting that out. Let's act upon that luck and let's act upon that gratefulness and be of service. Because I think it's a logical conclusion. But what I'm holding in is a lot of anger, not at the why the hell is this happening, or it's the pointing at blame. Not only a certain political party making up shit and saying this is the reason why it's happening, or this is happening because she wasn't here, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But what I'm also experiencing is people associating that the fact that this is human cause. This is mankind. This is humankind causing this. So take a look at what you've lost and compare it to, other persons suffering around the world. So what are you going to do about it? So it makes me so fucking angry. I guess I'm asking selfishly, what can we do about it?
Yeah. And I mean, the reality is in tragedy, people will try to make an opportunity out of it. Right. And you're seeing that either politically or in other spheres. And I think your anger is speaking to something that feels perhaps unjust or wrong with the narrative, with the situation. And so I would say, let the anger process through so you can understand the function of it and what it's trying to inform you of. Because then that anger has purpose and it's useful to you, right? Whether it is to defend a certain narrative or to learn more about a cause or to be involved in a tangible way, the anger is meant to galvanize you, right?
Right.
But if you're consumed by it, then you may also feel hopeless and immobilized, right? And so our goal is to hold the anger long enough to let the noise dissipate, but let the truth of what the anger is trying to tell you come through. So I wouldn't try to push the anger away. Your anger exists to protect you and the people you love and the things you love. And so sit with that anger long enough to understand its meaning.
It's
That's
a lot
interesting.
of processing. It's a lot of processing. Yeah.
Well, Tamlyn, I think I can relate to a certain extent because a lot of this anger has been building up since last year.
Yes.
Let's be honest, right?
Yes.
So we haven't had time to I mean, this sounds kind of selfish too, but we haven't had time to process what happened last year.
Mm-hmm.
And we're literally just starting to like wrap our head around what happened.
Let's not just dance around. It's the election, and January 20th is looming.
Right.
Yes.
So that we're still kind of stunned by, all of that. And then all these events, horrible things started happening in the new year with, the plane crash in Korea, the terrorism attack in New Orleans, and now these fires. And that's why I was like, we got to do an episode about like how to start this new year, on a more positive note and get ourselves mentally prepared. And then these fires hit. So I think this is a good thing to kind of talk about for our audience too. The shit is hitting the fan. That's how I feel. I'm like, this is crazy. 2025 is kind of shitty so far. Right. And we're like barely 2 weeks into it. Right. So, I mean, I'm just now being totally honest. This is a shit start to the new year.
Right.
And if this is a sign of the rest of the year, I'm kind of like, I'm out. I don't know how we're going to cope with the rest of the year.
We're all going to take Kelly's rooms in her house at Vegas.
Please do come over. Camp Kelly.
So Dr. Wang, I mean, this is something that I think a lot of probably people are thinking, wow, how are we supposed to kind of wrap our heads around this new year?
Yeah. And I think, if you think about January 1st being, in a sense, like an arbitrary start point.
Yeah.
Right? But, if you celebrate Lunar New Year, that could be your start.
Yep.
You get to pick.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And if you're lucky enough to celebrate Jewish New Year too, and Persian New Year too.
Exactly.
Keep starting over.
Keep starting over.
But you're right. I think there has been so much tragedy in all levels, right? And I think we have barely caught up to processing what's happened, and now this. Mm-hmm. And that is unfortunately how life can be in many seasons of it, right? The reality is there are going to be things outside of our control that are very difficult and devastating.
Yeah.
And I think similarly to how you choose to love and you choose to hope and you choose joy in the midst of very difficult seasons of your life, you get to choose. And some days you choose poorly and you say, screw it all, right? It just all sucks. Just set it all on fire, right? And then the next day you get another choice.
Yeah.
And you say, what measure of light and goodness can I bring to that moment? That's all we can do, right? I can only touch what I have influence over. Mm. And so pick the one thing for today, or pick a couple things for this week, and do it in community, because that will make it sustainable. Because when you say, I can't today, somebody will say, it's okay, I got it today, right? But it is a dumpster fire a lot of the time. And I think that we will move in and out. It's this tension of feeling hopeless and overwhelmed and stressed out. And then saying, I choose hope, I choose action, I choose connection. And that replenishes us and we move back and forth, right? But we all talk about wanting to be resilient people. The only way to be resilient is through adversity of things you can control or things you cannot. And so do we get to choose the things that happen to us? No. But you get to choose your response to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in these trying times, one after another, the one thing that I've noticed that people seem to really crave and need is community.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I think that will help everyone is that sense of community and support and connection, like you're saying. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Dr. Wang, Jenny, it's always so great to speak with you. And I think this was, perfect timing in a unexpected way that we were going to be doing this episode for different reasons, but I think it was perfect that we were able to speak.
It was really, really, really perfect. I mean, just the timing, and again, it's the opportunity that, May, you've always lent for Kelly and I to talk about things, but, it was just fortuitous that we got to, hold this space, literally hold this space in this time, and with all the shit that's happened, and continue to hear those little gems that happen to be, living inside each of our hearts. I need your hope,
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that too.
Yeah. So thank you. And just for the last thing that, for resilience to show up happens through adversity. It's like, how to practice, how to respond while going through the reactions, because we're just humans, we're animals, we just go rah, but then how to choose to respond, to connect, reconnect, strengthen the connections, and try to live day to day, and with small things. Again, small things matter a lot.
Jenny, one last question and piece of advice you can leave everyone with who's listening and watching. A lot of people don't want to ask for help, especially within our culture, right? Asians tend to not want to ask for help, especially when it comes to mental health. Any piece of advice you can give in terms of seeking that help out for those, especially for those who are really resistant to the idea?
Yes. I mean, I think, I always think about cost benefit of everything, right? What is the cost of asking for help? Which is, it's awkward. It's a foreign process for a lot of us. It's very vulnerable to ask for help. But, the benefit is you might get a chance to learn skills that help you live your life in a much more meaningful and freeing sort of way that allows you to build a life that's worth living. And I think that is a scary thing too, right? We get set on our ways. We think we're doing just fine. But if we're suffering, who else is now also suffering alongside us? And when we suffer in silence, shame brews there, right? And I think shame is one of the biggest threats to mental health. It's that there's something wrong with me, and that's why I can't seem to get it together, and I can't get out of bed, or I can't do the things I need to do. No, there's nothing wrong with you, but you need the support you need in order to build a life that you want. And so I think something we all can do actually to reduce some of that stigma is to be really upfront with the people we love about how we are doing, right? When we say, hey, I'm struggling or I'm having a hard time, it is for us, but it actually gives the other person the gift of also saying, me too. And maybe they've never shared that with another person until you did it. Yeah. So what does it look like to take off the mask, take off the face, and say, this is really how I am? Because you might just open the door for that other person to reach out to you and connect for help.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that happen. When I, admit my own vulnerabilities, people definitely say, oh my God, me too. So it's powerful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jenny Wang. As always, please take care. And thank you so much for giving us all that wisdom and advice for everyone who is listening and watching to take into their own heads and hearts. So, all right, we'll see you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Oh my God, that was helpful, and just the processing. I think it's a word that I continue to process in understanding what the full meaning of it is. But
Yeah.
when you open yourself up, being vulnerable, admitting that you're going through something, and everybody else says, I am too. It's like, shh, it's a secret. No, it's not. Just between the two of us, or whatever, the four of us. It's very, very helpful. It's very cleansing, and it's reaffirming.
Yes. Well, it makes
No,
us human. It makes us human. And
yeah,
it's like, we all have our issues. We all
yeah,
have stuff on our minds. And now with these fires, there's a lot of shit that people are dealing with. So
yeah,
compassion and empathy and sympathy, all those things have to be in play big time.
exactly.
I think oftentimes what holds us back from being vulnerable or admitting our vulnerability is, we're all, the three of us, we're alpha females, right? We work so hard,
No.
and it's a status thing too, right? There are certain people where you don't want to lose your status or lose their respect, and you
Right.
feel like maybe they're not deserving of your vulnerability, right?
Because it's so raw. Yeah.
Because it's so raw, or there's just, you just don't connect in the same way, but you have to find those people that you feel safe around, because
Right.
that's a big thing too, right? You don't want to break down, admit all these things, and then for somebody to come back and slap it in your face later, like my mom often does.
Yeah.
Because that's when you're most authentic, the child in you, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. She's been calling me, and she's been trying to get me to admit, how I should be so glad that I live in Vegas now, and that it's just stuff. If my place was to burn down in Brentwood, don't worry, you're gonna be okay. And I'm just like, I'm in the midst of it. I'm
Yeah.
not ready for that yet.
Right. Well, that's exactly what some of these tips were saying. Don't do. Don't say,
Yes.
well, it's just a house. You'll
It's
be able
just
to rebuild. Stuff like that.
Right.
You can't say that shit right now,
No.
people.
Not now.
No. I'm
No.
still in fight or flight mode.
Right.
Yeah,
It's like,
yep.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
people who have lost everything are just in shock. So
It's
Yes.
their lives. It's
don't
their
fucking say
lives.
that shit to them.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yes.
Yeah. But going back to what you were saying, Kelly, I mean, I think what I've learned as I've gotten older and wiser is that people who do look up to me because I'm older and wiser and more experienced,
Right.
they kind of really appreciate it when I am vulnerable and more open
Mhm.
about my shortcomings and my, sort of insecurities and things like that, because they're like, wait, you feel that way?
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually quite powerful.
Right.
And so now at this age, because I don't give a shit about what people think about me and how they judge me, if they think I'm weak, I don't fucking care,
Mhm.
by admitting these things, I think it's more helpful to a lot of people.
Absolutely. I think
In some way.
allowing yourself that vulnerability and allowing other people to be vulnerable in front of you without judgment, right? That's the thing,
Sure.
that people get embarrassed about
Correct.
breaking down,
Right.
or showing, their true feelings, their fear,
Yeah.
and so I think that's a really important thing, is really just allowing that space for
Right.
people
And right now,
with no judgment.
I'm seeing interviews with different people who have lost everything, and a lot of them are men. I remember seeing one with an actor. I can't remember his name right now, but he was being interviewed by a network correspondent, and he started breaking down because he was literally in front of his house that was gone. And he was trying to keep it in. And I'm like, dude, don't keep it in, man. You don't have to, don't feel like you have to be strong right now.
That's the thing too, right? Especially with men, we don't allow vulnerability. I remember watching Brene Brown once, and she had talked about this guy that was talking about vulnerability and how his wife and daughters would rather see him dead than be weak and
That's
vulnerable.
what he thought, or that's what?
Yeah, that's what he thought.
Oh.
That's how he felt.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, that hit me so hard.
Can you imagine having to maintain that?
And in a time of crisis like this, where I'm sure that there are a lot of husbands and fathers out there right now who are in so much fear of losing everything that they've built,
worked for,
right?
Yeah,
worked for, and they're still supposed to be the ones who are the strong ones and who are going to save their family from this destruction, or find them a place to live and make everything better.
Right.
These are the people that I really worry about, and there are women who are in the same in the same predicament as well.
Sure. Yeah,
but these are the ones that I really worry about.
Yeah,
the ones who are not allowed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to see a lot of different sort of the whole scale of emotional, reaction and and mental health. I'm worried about the mental health of so many people given this tragedy.
Right.
And it's going to be even more horrible when they start having to deal with insurance companies.
Well, that
frustration is going to be beyond.
I don't even want to go there. It's like these motherfucking insurance companies.
I know. They've been reporting about this and how they've been leaving California and they don't want to insure people, and so many people will not get covered.
Especially in the Palisades area.
Yeah, or dropped right before the fire season.
I think it was like farmers insurance.
Yeah,
that had dropped a huge percentage of people. Oh, it was State Farm. My bad.
Whatever. Yeah, whatever insurance company. Yeah, we know.
A lot of these insurance companies, the big ones, they're not. I hate to say this, but they're not great people.
And they just dropped people just last year.
Well, they did it the hurricane. Yeah. With the hurricanes on
with
the
East hurricanes
Coast,
too, yeah,
all those places. So it's kind of this is their MO. But yeah, so there's a lot to grapple with for sure. Thankfully, President Joe Biden yesterday announced that that the federal government was going to cover 100% of FEMA costs for California instead of the usual 80%.
80%, yeah.
My question is, can that be overturned in a couple of weeks? When Trump comes into office?
It takes an act of Congress to overturn that order, for that presidential order for, to cover FEMA. So
but we are
we're living
not the majority.
Yeah.
Congress has made a lot of them are complete lackeys. So who knows? That's the dilemma right now. It's all very unpredictable in terms of what's going to happen starting January 20th.
Right.
Yeah.
And so hopefully there are still people in Congress, at least hopefully the majority of people in Congress, regardless of party lines, that still have a heart and a soul and realize that this is
and I'll be cynical too, and donors in Pasadena and in Altadena, Pasadena, and Pacific Palisades. That's another fucking harsh reality.
Oh God, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
you're saying the donors to the presidential campaign. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So people have to realize that. Okay, so one thing I do want to mention, and this just brings me to that point. Pacific Palisades is one of the wealthiest communities in California.
And parts of Pasadena.
And parts of Pasadena. Let's start with Pacific Palisades. Yeah. So that's what a lot of people are focusing on because that's where all of the celebrities live.
It's everybody where everybody wants to live from around the world. Yeah.
Right. So, a house that was $85 million burned to the ground. So that's kind of the scale of it. So, but I want people to know who aren't from around here that it wasn't just the super rich that have been affected by these fires, right? We're talking about communities in Altadena and elsewhere where these were working class,
historic Black neighborhoods.
Historic neighborhoods. A lot of Asian families too affected that were, that like were able to own homes when they were being redlined,
Right.
Mm-hmm. So it's the socioeconomic, scale is huge. It's not just the super rich who lost their multi-million-dollar mansions. These are average middle-class, working-class families who have lost everything. So please don't think that this is just a super rich problem. It's across the board problem.
Right.
That everyone is facing. But
and it makes me wonder how many people are going to bother to come back and try to rebuild. I mean, I think there's going to be a huge percentage of people who are just going to leave town.
Maybe.
And there probably will be a new swath of
people who come in,
and it's a bargain.
I mean,
you're
literally building from the ground up. And again, that's
it's going to be so expensive and so difficult. Can you imagine trying to find
they're saying rents are
workers and or material. I mean, especially if tariffs go up, a lot of our materials come from overseas or Canada.
Yeah.
So these are things that are, California, the state of California will also have to try to implement somehow on a state level to try to control, costs and gouging and all of that, we very likely might see.
Yeah.
But no, that's why I said during the interview, this is a long journey.
It's a long,
ahead for everyone.
Right.
So we can't just disappear and act like everything's fine, because it's not going to be for a very long time. But in terms of assistance, there's so many different organizations and so many different ways to help. But this morning I was listening to a press conference. They've been doing daily press conferences. So the mayor was mentioning a couple of different major funds that you can donate to or help. So one is called the disasterassistance.gov. disasterassistance.gov. That's help for fire victims on a federal level, right? So that includes FEMA assistance. So you can immediately go to this website and get information, start applying. So that's one website. calfund.org is a fund for wildfire recovery overall. So if you want to donate there, but also if you need assistance, go to calfund.org. And then if you want an Airbnb, as we've probably a lot of us heard, Airbnb is providing homes for fire victims. And so they've expanded the number of homes that they're providing now. So you go to 211la.org, 211la.org to be able to get an Airbnb home. And then there's, of course, LA Fire Department Foundation. It's supportlafd.kindful.com. Again, this is all going to be on the screen as well as in our show notes. But like you mentioned, Kelly, there's so many animal organizations that are trying to help foster all the pets and wildlife that have been injured or, found on the street, or people who have lost their homes. They can't take their pets with them.
Right.
So there's something called the Canine Rescue Club, the Pasadena Humane Society. They said they don't want any more donation, like physical donations anymore for the time being.
It's monetary.
Much help.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
There's also another one that I'd like to add called CORE, CORE.
Okay.
That they do disaster relief around the world. And what they are doing for this particular disaster is they are providing people with masks and, things to protect themselves, especially in underserved communities, because a lot of times these areas, you think, it's just, it's really like about the air you're breathing. All the particles in the air right now are so dangerous and cancer causing. And you can't just wear like a regular surgical mask. You have to have N95 or better.
Right.
So CORE is going around taking donations and handing out masks and doing whatever they can to help people who are underserved, in these communities.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like you said, it's not just rich people. They help in ways where they find the pockets where people are not getting help, like through FEMA or, and so what they were doing in Lahaina, for instance, was they were giving assistance to the families who were taking in other families.
Right.
Okay.
And so they were like, what do you need? What more, can we get you so that you can, this is not such a burden on you financially.
Right.
Those are the kind of things that CORE does as well.
Right.
Okay.
And again, just reiterating what all of us are saying is that you can help as individuals on a micro level to friends and families whom you personally know, and you want to activate that reconnecting and making sure that you're holding space for them, but also on this macro level, to donate to organizations. And again, we cannot emphasize more that every small bit counts. Any financial donation, contribution that you can spare in this time and in the time being, because again, in the aftermath, in the rebuilding process, is like, if you don't feel like you could do something now or feel like everything is being taken care of now, try to think ahead of time, because the rebuilding process will take years, will take energy, will take funds. So just let's be mindful about reminding us about, who we are, how we're all connected with each other. And that again, every little bit helps.
Yeah. And something as simple as a phone call.
Yeah.
Somebody, like, seriously. So, I mean, I think we can all do our part in any big or small way. And again, in terms of donations, I thought it was interesting. I read that GoFundMe has created a centralized online hub to all verified fundraising efforts in this aftermath. So they're trying to organize that way so that it's not just totally random of all these different GoFundMes.
I'm glad that they're doing something to verify, because there's so many people who get cheated, right? Who take advantage of this.
There's already looters going around. Fuck those people. A special place in hell for those people. Okay.
I feel like they should be burned alive.
Yeah. Okay. That's maybe not the right context for this. So, of course there's going to be scammers. Of course there are going to be people taking advantage of the situation but for overall, I think there is a sense of humanity right now. And in honor of Jimmy Carter, who was
I'm wearing denim today.
Oh, is that for
him? You had the luxury, the privilege, the joy to interview him.
Yes.
Oh my God, Meili.
I interviewed him in Indonesia when he came he came to be a monitor for the Carter Center for the first democratic elections held in Indonesia in 1999. Was it? Yeah. And I met him and interviewed him, and he was so gracious and just such a wonderful symbol of democracy and justice and, and
humanity.
Service,
I mean, a manly man. It's like, that's a manly man.
But just a man of faith, and just, driven by that faith and love for his wife, Rosalind. And I had, I was very fortunate in my career. I also interviewed Rosalind at the Carter Center many years later for another network. And she was talking about all their work that they had done to eradicate different diseases, including guinea worm. And she was so proud of it. She took me on this tour of this gallery of photos, and she was showing me all these photos from Africa. And she's like, look, see this one? It's a sign. See what the sign that they're holding up and said, no more guinea worm. And she just was beaming with pride because they had helped, eradicate this horrible disease.
What they did after his presidency,
remarkable.
I mean, they talk about dedicating their lives to helping people.
Service.
They were more effective, I think, even after their president.
Well,
after his presidency,
post-president for sure, by far. But their love for each other, the work that they did together, they truly were true Christians. They walked the walk of Jesus.
Yes.
Like really, they were helping the poor and the sick and the marginalized their entire lives. And so his life and legacy is inarguably one of the greatest, right? When it comes to one of the greatest Americans. But why am I bringing this up? Oh, because in honor of him, you can also volunteer for Habitat for Humanity. Because
I've done that. It's amazing.
There are going to be houses, right? And so that's going to be I think that would be a great way to volunteer. So, I'll put up that website too.
Also,
they're going to need help.
if you can't volunteer and you just want to donate money or stuff,
again,
there's a Habitat for Humanity place called Restore, where you can donate like household goods or like furniture or things to build for your house. There's so many things that people just throw away, but you can give it to Restore, and they will resell it to people who are building their house or trying to furnish a house or whatever. It's not of course not in every city or not in every place, but I think maybe some of the bigger cities have them. But yeah, that's a great organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the needs are so vast that, like, I mean, it's everything from toiletries to, home building and everything in between.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, we'll be kind of keeping an eye on this and continuing to inform, on social media and, obviously through the show. But the three of us are, we're all connected to this story. And so we'll be at it for a while, I think. And if there's something, I don't know, ladies, but I was thinking we should do something together. Shoes off inside.
I was thinking of driving over there and fostering some animals. I wonder if they'll let me bring them back to Vegas.
Oh, well, you might have to, but because you're in space. But no, I think maybe something we can work on together. But by doing this, holding this space today, I'm glad we did this.
Me too.
Yeah. Thank you. How it turned out. It's
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, we'll keep everyone posted, of course. But and if our listeners or viewers have any ideas or suggestions or just want to share, please do. Follow us on social media at Shoes Off Inside MKT and on YouTube at Shoes Off Inside. So we love hearing from you and thank you for your support. And we're gonna just keep on doing our thing for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Love you guys.
Thank you.
Okay.